like 2D platformers? Yes. Do you like hand-drawn sprites? Yes. Do you like these glasses? Yes. Do you like getting your fucking ass kicked every 5 seconds and dying? Yes. Well, I have the game for you. It's called Astal. It's on the Sega Saturn, bitch. Bitch. Oh, hello. Welcome back. Did you guys miss me? I know it's been a little while, but I'm back now. And today I'm going to be taking a look at a game called Astal for the Sega Saturn. This is a 2D platformer. This one came out in 1995 for the Sega Saturn. And it's mostly a single player game, but you can do 2-player co-op if you feel like it. One player will just control Astal, and then the other player will control his bird companion. And I will talk about all of that shit later because it doesn't matter right now. Now, this is the first time that I've played this game, and I'm doing it for the sake of this review. So, if you've already played this in the past and you have rose-tinted glasses, do not get angry with me when I nitpick this one, because that's just what a reviewer does. Shit. So, what's to know about this game? Well, as I said, this one came out in 1995. Now, it was developed and it was published by Sega. Okay? Fuck. So this game came out in 1995, probably before you were born, and it was developed and published by Sega. And it was also released the same year in both North America and Japan, only just a few months apart, and there are a couple regional differences that are worth noting. Now, in Japan, the game starts you off with 5 lives, and you get unlimited continues. And in North America, they whittled that down because they hate America. You start with 3 lives and you get 1 continue, which basically renders the game impossible. So if you plan on playing this, I have either 2 suggestions here. The first being, you get the Japanese version. The second being, you cheat like I did. Now, if you've watched any of my reviews, you know that I cheat, and I've got absolutely no problem cheating my ass off on these really hard, ridiculous games. So, there are cheat codes for this. I gave myself unlimited lives, and you can too. I will flash it on the screen how to do that if you feel like getting it from me. Otherwise, Google is your friend, or just use the pause button really quick and write it down. But, anyway, that's all there is to know about this one, so now we're just going to go right into the review.
Somewhere in the universe, the goddess Antawas created a world from a single jewel. She created the earth, water, sky, and air. And 2 humans from a red jewel and a green jewel. From the red jewel, a boy named Astal. And from the green jewel, a girl, Lida. Lida had the power to create life. Astal's purpose was to protect Lida. Astal protected her fiercely, sometimes too fiercely.
Briefly, what we've got going on here is Astal and his sister Lida were born from some rocks. Don't ask questions, it doesn't matter. And Astal's job is to protect Lida at all costs. Sure, why not? Sometime after, Lida gets kidnapped and dropped into an ocean, as one does. Astal rescues her, but ruins the ocean, and some deity was mad and banished Astal, but... oh god. But Lida gave him a crystal... whatever. Dude, it doesn't matter. This story sucks and you don't need it. Let's get on with this already. The first thing I noticed was that this game is exactly what the Sega Saturn was built to do. It is a 2D platformer with hand-drawn sprites and utilizing some really nice scaling effects and backgrounds that look like watercolor paintings. This game really looks good, and there's not much I can fault it for here. The game offers a nice variety of stages, and while they look good, they aren't very creative aesthetically speaking, ranging from your typical assortment like a forest, caverns, volcano, ice, sky, pretty much anything you can picture being in a Mega Man game, it's in this game, but again, they do look pretty damn good. There's also some fun variations to keep things somewhat interesting, like in the deep forest stage. The lights flicker out, leaving only Astal's eyes visible momentarily. It doesn't make the level any more difficult, but it is a nice graphical touch. There's also this stage, the River of Dreams, where you ride on the back of a sad dragon and repeatedly beat the ever-loving fucking shit out of it to get it to attack enemies or bounce you into the air and over obstacles that cause you damage. While it looks fun and appears at first to be a nice change of pace, this is actually the first time in the game where you will realize just what a bitch the difficulty can be. The enemies aren't exactly mind-blowing in their variety, and there aren't a ton of different variations to kill, but there's a small selection of unique enemies throughout the different stages, and none of them are exactly difficult to dispose of. In fact, really none of them are. Most are just one hit and they're dead. There are also bosses after every 1 or 2 stages, and I will discuss them in a little bit. You work your way through each stage using all of Astal's attacks or moves, or his birds. The default setup, which I did not use and is completely customizable in the settings, thank God, because the default setup sucks dick, is that the C button jumps and the A button uses whichever function is highlighted for the bird sidekick to use, and you can scroll through functions with L and R. With the 6-button controller, you get access to all of the bird's actions at once without scrolling through them. More on all of that in about 15 seconds. Pushing B next to an enemy results in a throw and the enemy's death. Pressing down and B next to an enemy will have Astal punch the ground, which will stun nearby enemies, allowing you to kill them. Holding up, then pressing B will see Astal shoot a gust of wind out of his filthy-ass mouth, which blows away any nearby enemies. If you jump an attack, which is what I used quite a bit, it will have Astal perform a downward punch, which can take out multiple enemies at once. Astal can also dash by pushing twice quickly in one direction, and you can do a rush attack this way. Coming back to the bird, while playing through the levels, you will collect crystals which power up your bird's abilities. You can have it search for items like health or attack enemies. As I mentioned in the intro, you can also play this with 2 players, where 1 player controls the bird. The gameplay, as far as I know, remains mostly the same. You're just doing it with a second player taking the control of the bird instead of player 1. Astal's health in the game is indicated on the bottom of the screen by what appears to be some sort of low-hanging fruit, which is always the best kind. Every time Astal takes damage, he loses 1 part of health, and when they're all gone, it mostly goes without saying that he kicks the bucket. He fucking dies. His health bar isn't exactly huge, so it's not very difficult to get your ass kicked in this game. Your remaining lives is in the left-hand corner next to your health, and you might notice in some of this footage, I have lives in the double digits, and that's because I'm a filthy cheater, and I make no apologies for that. I will cheat my fucking ass off through games. I don't care. To the right of your health and middle screen is your bird's power meter, which I discussed about 20 seconds ago if you remember, and next to that is the function your bird will currently perform if you push A and aren't using X, Y, and Z on a 6 button. Listen, I will admit that this seems a bit complicated, but really once you're in the game, it's all pretty straightforward stuff, and you will get the hang of this pretty quickly. What you need to remember is what attacks work best when, and what button does what for the bird, and also remember to use the bird to constantly bring you health power-ups so you don't die as well. Fuck. Man, I can't read this shit. Just to have him bring you health power-ups and use its attack when he's fully powered up. That's what you need to know about the bird. So the stage design in this game isn't really going to break any new ground, but it is decent enough. But what you're going to find yourself doing is walking from left to right on almost every stage that's not a boss. And during that time, you're going to be jumping on some stuff, walking some more, killing some enemies, jumping on some platforms, killing some more enemies, walking some more, jumping on some shit, killing more enemies. And then you're going to do that until you reach the end of the stage. And then you're going to do that again on the next one. I know it sounds pretty boring and repetitious, but the devs did a pretty good job at keeping the levels interesting enough where it doesn't really get boring, and it's usually fun for most of the game. One thing though that does set this one apart is the music, and it stands out compared to other 2D platformers of this type. Now I think either they used Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo as an inspiration, or they just straight up tried to rip it off. Either way, there's a lot of percussion and guitar here, and there's a lot of really chill tunes as well for like the ice stages or the caverns. Think of the underwater level on Donkey Kong Country. If you've played that game, you probably have a pretty good idea of what I'm talking about. I'm going to play a couple snippets for you here, just so you can get an idea of what's going on with the music in this one. Now, there's a lot of old school nasty shit going on here that I briefly mentioned in the intro, such as the lack of continues and lives, and another issue here is the fact that when you die in this game, you die for real.
Don't you get it? If you die in the game, you die for real.
Or, you'll more than likely get taken back to the very beginning of the stage. I'm clearly not a fan of this mechanic because I actually want to be able to play through the game, not just play the same thing over and over again like these older titles love making you do. Some longer stages do have a checkpoint midway through the level, but for the most part, when you die, be prepared to start the stage from the beginning. And when you use one continue and then lose all of your lives, prepare to start the game over. Nothing is more infuriating than this crap, but in this case, I can at least wrap my brain around why Sega did it, even if I hate it. Astal is short as hell. You can easily beat this game in 2 hours if you do everything right, so of course Sega had to ramp up the difficulty and cheap out on the lives and continues to make sure you won't be beating it anytime soon. They did this so you couldn't just rent it and beat it. Typical North American release bullshit at the time. So, cheat like I did, problem solved, moving on. Another nitpick of mine is that Astal on screen is actually a fairly large sprite, and it's very easy for him to collide with enemies and cause them damage. This can actually be very frustrating at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty easy to overlook. Astal's movement is also fairly sluggish, which can make some of the more challenging platform sections a real pain in the ass, such as on the Sea of Clouds stage, which gave me such a hard time trying to complete. I must have died 20 times on the platforming sections here, and it brought me very close to pure rage. And the platforming on the falling pillars on the Crystal Palace is total bullshit and impossible to land the jumps from the falling pillars. I never got used to this, and I wish Sega would have tightened up these controls a little bit more, as well as made Astal a little bit speedier, but I'm sure they figured that would result in an even shorter game, so they went ahead and skipped all that. Thanks, Sega. If you've ever played Super Tempo, also for the Sega Saturn, you'll have a pretty good idea what Astal controls like, since I found the games to play very similarly, although I do think Astal is the better game. I also reviewed Super Tempo, and I'll throw a link in the description below if you want to check that one out. After every level or two, you will fight a boss. These bosses look generally pretty rad and range from an eye with wings called, appropriately, the Evil Eye, a killer plant called the Forest Fiend, a flaming phoenix called the Guardian of Fire, a behemoth that is also called the Behemoth, a flying ice thing called Frostbite, and then the two final bosses, one of which is a little bitch human that talks shit while you fight, and then the other being Ganondorf from Zelda, or as he's known in this game, Gerardo. These boss battles aren't life-affirming, and many times when you first encounter them, you will lose plenty of lives trying to figure out exactly what the hell the game wants you to do. And there's some strategy required here to defeat each boss, but it's impossible for me to ignore the fact that this game is basically impossible without cheating, so it's almost impossible for me to ignore the fact that these bosses will essentially serve as the end of your run the first couple times you fight them. And that will result in you having to either continue or start the game over, so I wish it was a little more clear what the game wants you to do when you encounter each boss. Instead, you enter each fight completely clueless on what to do and die many times while you take damage trying random things until you find the one that works. After the first couple bosses, I just resorted to using an online guide that details the weaknesses of each boss, and I strongly suggest you do the same if you plan on giving this one a go. Each boss has a life meter represented by this stupid crystal here in the corner. When you whittle that down to nothing, the boss dies and you carry on your merry way. Nothing to it really, but they will kill you a lot. Once the boss is dead, you will be treated to a slightly animated cutscene that generally looks good with horrible voice acting and bad writing. These are fun to watch because they're campy and terrible, but they don't serve the gameplay whatsoever, so you can just ignore these all day long if you want to. The final battle in this game sees you go up against a bizarro version of Ganon from Zelda, and he's not too bad, he's just completely unoriginal. You'll throw some trees at him and dodge his attacks while throwing him around, making him your bitch for a couple minutes, then he dies. It's not exactly an epic fight, but nothing in this game really is. Ultimately, what you get here are some standard levels that look great but offer nothing truly original. It has a great soundtrack and some amazing looking 2D artwork, as well as some decent and frustrating boss battles, but essentially what you have is a straightforward and difficult platformer that does not overstay its welcome and is worth at least a playthrough. I think one of the bigger issues here is the lack of replayability. As far as I can tell, there aren't any secrets to uncover. There's only one standard path
through the stages, no hidden stages, no collectibles, nothing. So once you've beaten the game, you've seen all there is to it, and that's a shame because I think with a little tweaking and maybe a little bit more time spent on development and a few more ideas implemented by the creative team, this really could have stood out as one of the better platformers of the era, but instead what we get is a fairly standard platformer that's decent but forgettable. I don't normally rate games on a scale on my channel, but for this one, if I were rating it out of 10, this would sit comfortably at a 6. It's slightly above average, and it's fun for what it is, but it offers nothing new.
Well, there you go. There's Astal for the Sega Saturn. Now, it's definitely got its flaws, but generally it's a pretty fun game. And if you like 2D platformers, check this one out. It looks awesome, and for the most part, it plays pretty good. Now, some things I've got coming up in the pipeline. Hopefully, I regularly get some more videos out now, but I've been fairly busy these past couple of weeks. I've also got some wedding coming up this weekend. Not that any of it matters, but don't think that I'm like in the hospital or anything just because I don't have videos coming up. It's just been a pretty busy time. But some ideas that I do have, though. We got a Japanese Nintendo 64, and what I'm going to be doing is modding this for RGB output, and I also just got this Hydra SCART switcher here, and these were actually pretty hard to get. Now, I had ordered another SCART switcher from Hong Kong back in December. Unfortunately, apparently the owner of the company is dead from COVID, and so now what they're doing is just taking people's money and not shipping out the product, which is a shame because my last SCART switcher came from them. This is Otaku Games, by the way. And the SCART switcher is awesome. So it sucks that they're doing that now. So don't buy anything from them. I don't trust that company at this point because I've heard nothing back from them. I don't feel like I'm getting my money back, and I also don't feel like I'm getting the switcher. So we got the Hydra. I do import this from Poland, and these are actually hard to come by now because of that global chip shortage. So that kind of sucks. It's not cheap either. I've also got these power crystals. I'm probably just going to stick these up my ass and just harness the energy from those. So, you know, take it or leave it, whatever. Regardless, got that Nintendo 64. I'm going to try to make a mod video on that one. Hopefully I get that by next week, but unfortunately I'm still waiting for the EverDrive for that. And if you can believe it, the EverDrive ships from the Ukraine, and if you didn't know about that, there's a war going on in Ukraine, so I don't know when I'm gonna get that. So we're just kind of in the dark. Everything is just fucked right now. The world is pure chaos. Everything is going straight to hell. But we'll get to it as soon as we can. And thank you guys for watching this shit. Hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Have a great night.
Kaylee killed that box, yeah. Kaylee killed that box, what? Kaylee killed that box. Fuck that box. Fuck that box, bitch. Fuck that box. Look at that box. It's fucked. Yeah. Tear it up. Tear that shit up. Yeah. Fuck that box. Fuck that box. Fuck that box. Fuck that box. Yeah. Tear that shit up. Fuck that fucking box. Tear it up. Tear it up. Kaylee Doug hates boxes. What the fuck?